Hey, everybody. I just want to start off by congratulating you. Why? Because you're the few, the people who are taking what's going on today and applying your time to your profession and understanding that this, like everything else, good and bad, is temporary and we move on. The topic today is really how to work from home. What's working for a particular leader today? Ian was on the show probably a couple of years ago, I think. Great guy. We've stayed in touch since. He's building a team in the UK. And we're going to share some of the things that are going on today. At the end of the interview, on the outro, I'll be sharing my experience of two previous crisis-type situations. Of course, the financial thing that went on in 2008 and 9/11. And I think when you're in the middle of something, you think, oh, this is never going to end, or how do I manage through this? And I'll give you, my firsthand experiences with both of those situations and how at the time they looked overwhelming, but it really turned out perfectly fine. So let's get into the interview. Also, I'll update everybody who's in the course on what's going on. I think one key differentiator that I've noticed in the last 3 weeks is the number of entrepreneurs. And I'm like, wow, it's clear why they'd be interested in the courses and improving themselves and utilizing this time, but also why the difference between the salespreneur and the employee, you're going to notice the difference really quickly. And I'll talk about that. I'll also be firing up or reinvigorating my sale or career strategy podcast. I started it 2 years ago. I did a bunch of episodes, but I just got busier with the sales stuff and the courses. And everyone seemed to be pretty happily employed at the time. But look for that. Search on iTunes or your podcast player for that, sales strategies. I'll be putting out episodes to help people work through the career part of these situations. And also check out our partners over at CoVideo. Video, email, and video is obviously a huge thing right now. We need to become good at it. It's one of the ways that we're communicating more effectively. CoVideo.com. Give it a trial. See if you like it. See if it can work for you. And it certainly works for me. It's been a game changer recently. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Ian, welcome back to the show. Give us a little update on yourself.
Hey there, Brian. Progress with the same business. We're in cloud telephony, which makes to what's happening today in the world with business continuity awareness very interesting for us. And I continue to be actively involved in things like the Association of Professional Sales, Institute of Sales Management, and actively producing content and continuing to learn. And interesting, the big change, I guess, is I've got a new sales coach in for me and my team, and we're learning a lot. And I think the big thing is opened my eyes to that, even having been in sales an awfully long time, boy, have I learned a lot in the last 3 or 4 months from this individual.
Yeah.
That is disrupting the way I think about selling fully, and it works. We've been using some of the techniques. We're a white belt to his black belt is his description. But even the white belt learnings we've had, my team is enjoying learning, and it's enthusing them to do something new and make it exciting and passionate. But also we're learning techniques that work in today's selling environment. And you fall into that. I thought I knew it all. So right now it's great because we're learning a lot. And I think we all are going to learn a lot over the current period as we record this, with the coronavirus just taking full impact and we're all working remotely, as to what contingency does that bring upon us as individuals and across our business.
Yeah. Now, I guess in the UK, you guys weren't as affected from 9/11 as we were in the US, but it has that feeling for me because I was less than 3 miles from the Pentagon that day.
Right.
And I kind of had this, I still had the meeting, and my boss goes, "You had the meeting?" I go, "I didn't know what was going on."
Yeah.
My SDR, who was with me that day, lives in Lower Manhattan, and he had seen the video. And I thought it was just a small prop plane, but it has a similar feeling where people just shut down instead of engage with other people.
Well, I can't context that experience, but right now for me, it's the realization that this is going to have the initial thing we've all got to consider is obviously people dying in the health and respect that. But this has a realization of the true impact it's going to have on business, particularly the average business, which is smaller, and how it's highlighted for me how different verticals are affected in a different way, right? So in technology sales, we're still can talk to people, we've got all the technology ready and we're up and running, and I'm on my desk phone at home. It just all works because it's the world we live in. But if you're a restaurateur or if you're in travel, what's the impact on your revenue stream? You know, a cloud-based business, your existing revenue stream continues, excepting for companies that go out of business and can't continue to pay you. But it's a subscription model.
Yeah.
But what about those businesses which potentially are going to be industries that are going to be decimated by this? The airlines, travel, restaurants. What is the contingency? How much can they recover? What consolidation of market are we going to see following this? What's the knock-on effect? What if you're a stationary company providing 2 or 3 of the big travel companies as your core customers, and 80% of your revenue is about to stop? You know, there's a knock-on effect through the supply chain as well. And for salespeople, I think the challenge is right now is to stay positive, but it's going to affect pipeline. Deals are going to be delayed. They're going to stop because budgets are put on hold. What do you do about it? How do you behave? Working remotely may be something that you're more familiar with than the average worker in your business, but that's typically a day here, day there, and the rest of the world hasn't gone home. So your customers, your prospects are at home. How do you behave now? Because you still need to look at the other side of when we come out of this, at continuing to do business and revenue for your own business. So I think there's 50 questions that no one's had to deal with before. And we're all trying to figure out quickly how you best adjust and execute in that market.
And what are you coaching your reps to do?
So we part of it, and I'll try not to do an advert here, but part of it is we were ready. We run a breadth of cloud-based technologies, and our own telephony platform, which is what we build and sell to customers, is ready to go with this. So right now, I could take a call with a customer who says, can I speak to finance? I can see who from finance is online, who's at lunch, and I'm sat at home on my PC, just as if I was in the office. It makes no difference. The physicality makes zero difference. So we're operational on support everything today. So it hasn't had that impact. More for me is how do we now adjust that? Our lead flow, for example, has gone. All the events, tell me an event that's still happening. You know, worldwide events, sporting events and places like Disneyland that you would never have considered would close except in the apocalypse have closed. Everything is shut. So there's no events to go to. There's no, all the key events that you had nurtured and discovered, that was the key event for us. That one works, that one doesn't. Great, we know. But if it isn't happening, it's irrelevant. You know, and I see a lot of them going online. How effective is that? We're yet to see, but it's certainly not going to be as effective as doing a show where people always come to it and you engage and you meet them personally and you build rapport. So it's difficult. So what we've done is everyone's remote. My team, and I'm proud of my team that they are hopefully well coached and mentored, right? But they're doing their own daily huddles together. I've got a web call with them tomorrow, and the technology facilitates this. And we're keeping everything moving. They've just come up with produced some video content themselves today. So they're not just waiting for marketing. And I think this is an important point for any salespeople there. They're not waiting and leaving the responsibility to everyone else. They're getting their hands dirty, talking together and pushing the business of, look, here's what we've created. We've done some stuff ourselves, but here's what we need. And can you help with this? And they've driven another call I've got later on this afternoon with, look, we've got a load of ideas. We had a call this morning. We want you and the CMO on the call. So they're not waiting for it to be handed to them, whilst myself and our sales leadership and our marketing leadership are all figuring things out about how we create content, how do we do things differently. So webinars, I'm in our video production studio company tomorrow producing some video blogs. I'm writing some blog material now. They've come up with some videos to how do you adjust and how do you do it rapidly and get going that you're being productive, be it on different things. How do you reach customers? What you don't want to do is inundate them with emails. You've got to be cognizant that they're going through the same thing you're going through. I've just had a prospective client we've been engaged with for quite a while come back to me literally before I jumped on this call with an apology to get back to you, but you know why? But let's set up a call for 4 weeks' time. And I respect the fact he's come back to me, but you can't be chasing every day. It's a different agenda now for people. What's going on in their business? You don't know if they're now in survival mode, if they're going to have to let employees go, what struggles they're going through and purely being able to work from home. And I'd argue some of it because they haven't got our system yet. They delayed buying, right? So it might have been a bit of a help if they'd gone quicker. But right now, we've all got to be respectful of each other's challenges, because this is an unprecedented experience.
And I got to tell you, today I had 2 cancellations, and I got to tell you how off. And these are both, one a CMO of $1 billion company, and the other one a CRO of a high-tech SaaS-based communication platform. And they said, well, we've got too much going on right now. I replied back, I go, do you realize you will reach more sales leaders and salespeople in 30 minutes than your whole team will in 1 year?
Yeah.
And they go, I'm still busy.
Yeah.
Busy doing stuff that doesn't work. This is what people don't get, is that this has been going on for 10 years.
Yeah, and there's life after it, right? Let's hope there is. That's a bad phrase with people taking it medically ill, right? But the business should continue afterwards, and you can't ignore that fact. We are going to experience a time of challenge. Is the next quarter for businesses going to be devastating? For some, it will put them out of business. But if you're not looking at how do you come out of this at the other end, what tactics, and it is tactics, I think now, not strategies. You haven't got time for strategies. What tactics can you execute on right now, like you just described, that will help mitigate the damage that this is going to do, an impact it's going to have to your business?
Yeah, and I think my motto has always been, or my mindset is, be a salespreneur, not an employee. And too many people fall into the employee. They don't have their own hardware, their own SaaS software, their own version of their CRM. They haven't been, connecting on LinkedIn, the things that you and I have been talking about for years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that they don't know what to do. But you have a good 2 to 4 to 6 weeks of planning, research, connecting up with people. And last week was my best week ever, because I was telling my audience, this is the time to educate, to become great at your skills.
Yeah, I just did, funny enough, I just did a webinar yesterday for the Association of Professional Sales on personal brand, which was booked ages ago, but yet incredibly well attended, and the engagement I've had since, I absolutely agree with you. I haven't even accepted all the LinkedIn connections yet, and fantastic event and endorsements from it, because this has highlighted the importance of digital engagement and selling techniques, because you're not going to be able to get someone on the phone because they're not even at the desk. Unless you already know their mobile number, how are you going to reach them?
Right. And do they want to hear your pitch? If they don't know, like, and trust you, do they really think you care about them?
Yeah.
But
yeah, exactly.
If you've had even a cursory relationship online, helping each other out, you got to keep.
And for many, this is going to be an opportunist time. Now, not to take it the wrong way, but depending what your product or service is, customers are going to need you even more, and they're going to need to hone their supply chain, and they're going to need to be more effective. And people are going to be looking for salespeople who I'm not saying knew what to do in this situation, because who knows what to do, but have learned what to do during this period. You've got, as you say, a 4 to 6 week. We're hearing rumours in the UK where the lockdown might be 12 weeks, but there's so many rumours about this thing and misinformation, as we've seen online. Who knows? But
the game's been played. China's already open. Taiwan's open again. And just look at the curve. And they weren't.
So, but whatever it is, it's not a couple of days.
No.
what do you do? And if your salespeople don't know what to do now, you haven't talked to them about social selling, their personal brand, and all the stuff that's been existing for years. If you're reliant on phoning them, well, you can phone as many companies as you want, but you're going to, most of them, because they haven't got business continuity, you're not going to get through because the phone's going to ring out. And I've already experienced it. I've been test trying, because what we work in is cloud telephony. I've been test calling a few businesses and seeing what happens with a contact center. And it's interesting proof point that their technology is not ready to support remote working at this level. It's if one individual is, that's great, but that's their choice. When it's imposed upon them, I'm getting calls that are going into dead ends. I'm getting calls that are, sorry, we're just not available, basically, because we've got nowhere routing calls anywhere. So, great, at least they've put a message on to tell me. But what do? I'll go online. And some of them, I'm finding their online presence then doesn't help because there's no chat, there's no tools to do it. You literally are in a dead end.
Right. And it makes the people who are touting building your online presence, your online network, that know, like, and trust digitally, now it scales. Instead of trying to wait. And the people I've been talking about, texting and cell phone exchange as fast as possible. Yeah.
And the challenge I think you've got with sales leaders right now in sales is productivity. What is happening? I think technology is part of this. Technology today, as we're doing right now with this across the world, it's there. Bandwidth is there, although there may be some challenges. Watching online, interestingly, with some of the conversations around the challenges that the bandwidth may have, with everyone streaming Netflix HD because the kids are at home, and it's not just, you may not be doing it, but if everyone else in your neighborhood is, it eats into this shared bandwidth that you're on. You don't have a dedicated pipe, unfortunately, and people don't often realize this. So that hasn't, I haven't seen any impact. We're not seeing it here yet, but is that going to impact? But have you also, with all of your staff, got a behavioral aspect and a process aspect? It's a multiple thing. People, process, technology again. It's all of those have got to line up. If you've got the tech, but people don't know how to use it because they've never worked from home, it's going to fail. If you haven't got the process underlying the tech, it's going to fail. Ideally, what you want is the customer engagement continues and it's transparent to them. I think customers in this instance are going to be a little bit more understanding of a dog barking in the background or a noise than they would be under any other circumstance, because they know it's been forced upon us all. But you really ideally want the perfect, for me, I'd want to call someone, speak to them, have them transfer me to someone else in their business, and be asking them, are you all still in the office? No, we're all at home, but to feel like they're all still in the office and not know any different is the panacea that you should be looking for.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been working from home for good 15 plus years, and I was always a remote rep. And I got to the point where it's like, why am I going to an office? There's only one other person from the company there, and we have a need to talk for maybe 20 minutes a day. Now, let's go back to the sales coaching, because I really liked that, and what you got out of it. What were some of the major epiphanies?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. So I guess we all go through BANT, Scotsman, Spin, TAS, and keep going and going and going. There's methodologies, which as a format, I don't have an issue with. Budget's relevant, authority, all those things are relevant. But I think those methods are used in too formulaic a fashion. And what this individual has done in coming in, there isn't a method. It's all about, and what we're learning, we're at the early stages of learning, is it's all about the verbiage you use to engage and the patterns used. And the first thing he took us through is how, as salespeople, the buyer typically sees us all pretty much the same. We behave very similarly, so it's very difficult to stand out or to not follow the customer's process. And that's what we do, right? Is the customer will have, we say, well, what's your buying process? Or whatever phrase you might use to tease it out. Well, what's the next stage? What's the next action? And any salespeople listening to this who haven't, most people do this, right? And I'm guilty myself, because it's the pattern we've been educated in to behave like. And what we're learning is about how to disrupt and change that process. As, why do you just follow the process? Okay, well, and this individual challenges us those questions where you have to explain yourself, and it's, well, because, and then you start, even when you hear the question, you start thinking, that's a good point. How do I defend now to a sales coach why I follow the customer's exact process? What do you do? Say, because they're the customer. Well, that's not right. Hang on a minute. I've got value in it. And you start questioning your own piece. And it's been an eye-opener to the bad habits that we thought were good habits. And we've had, I've led lots of teams, and I've got a successful place right now where we've grown year on year. Last year was the most successful year, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not failing. It's how do we execute better? It's what don't, and for me, it was, I don't know what I don't know. And I got this individual in with a recommendation and thought, well, we're going to hear a few new bits and bobs. And that's great. If I learn 5% more than I had, that's great. And then by the first lunchtime, my whole team and myself were sat there sort of goggle-eyed of, where we thought we were at this level, we've just gone back to this, even though we're quite experienced. We need to rethink an awful lot of things about how we talk to customers, how we engage, the questions we ask, the process we take. And we've been using them already ever since. But we're still at the basic level. We've got a lot to learn. We've got 2-3 more days in the next quarter. We're investing in our team to do this. And I'd recommend to anyone, I've been told before, not where I am now, but well, Ian, you've been doing this a long time. You've got a successful track record. Why do you need someone external? You train them. Why do we need to spend money? And my view is, well, I've got a blinkered view, of the people I'm working with, because I work with them closely. So that makes it difficult to make independent judgment. And I've only got the experience of the track I've been on. And whilst that's been successful, I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
And this individual's come in and thrown loads of things on there that I've never come across. And I sat with my team and said, you know what, guys, I've never learned that. And so there's no blame culture. You're doing something wrong. We are doing something wrong, but we all are, because no one's ever told us to do something different.
Right. And you got to ask yourself, why would Tiger Woods have a coach? He's been playing golf since he was 3 years old. He knows how to play golf, but he can't watch himself swing. He can get a video. Yeah. He doesn't have the same person following him for years.
Yeah.
And I had that epiphany probably about 5 years ago. I hired a chess coach. Been playing chess since I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Never been very good. I've been okay. Right. But I wanted to get better. It's a passion. I apply it to sales. It's very strategic. Keeps my mind thinking one more step ahead. And when I did it, my growth and ability in chess went exponential.
Yeah. And I think now, with what we're all going through, now is the perfect time to go and find, you will have, and I've said to everyone, and including with our prospect customers, once we get through the initial stages of getting to work from home and getting settled, people are going to have some more time on their hands, right? Because they're not going to have meetings in the office, and a meeting that might have taken 3 hours in the office probably won't be 3 hours online. So they are going to have some bandwidth they didn't expect. What are they going to do with it? And one thing is, you can spend the time to learn some podcast, webinar, learn some stuff. And for salespeople, you can use social techniques to perhaps get some engagement with people you couldn't get on the phone before, and have some conversations that are recognizing the situation that's going on. So, you can ignore that. And you may not want to push them on, you can't do the usual, well, let's have a meeting. When? But what you can do is start to say, well, look, this is the proposition. Now's probably not the right time, but perhaps what we've got may have changed. Like, you now need to be more efficient. You now need to change some of your there's some stuff. Why don't we look to have some conversations while we're off, and discussions, and then meet when we all end up back in the, what you don't want to be is assuming everyone's turned off and just go quiet.
Right. Panic.
Yeah. Business has got to continue. It's just going to continue for a short period in a different format. And the tools like we're using now are openly available. Right. You can easily communicate, phones, mobiles. We're in a world where the technology enables remote working and empowers it.
Yeah. And that's it, because time doesn't freeze. The fight, flight, or freeze. Too many people are in the freeze mode. Problem with the freeze mode is the time is a continuum.
But
And
your targets are going to continue, right?
your
So
bills continue.
the game now is, what do you do about the pipe? Because of the unexpected impact on your prospective customer, out of their control, and they're not going to now spend because the game's changed for them. But what are you going to do about it? And you've got some choices. You stick your head in the sand and hope and pray. You give up and run around in despair, or you hunker down and figure out it's going to be hard. I'm going to have to do some things differently. I'm going to have to perhaps learn some new skills, approach things differently, and I may not come out the back of it for, let's say, calendar Q3 or 4 this year as successful as I would have been. But I'm not going to just give up and let myself be as low as I could be. I'm going to try and recover whatever I can recover. And that's, I think, the only thing any good salesperson can do is dig in, dig deep, work harder. I've said to my team, we now need to work 3 times harder to even stand still.
Yeah, great. Hey, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to follow you?
Sure. Well, as usual, I hope I've made it easy. 2 key places, ianmoyse.co.uk and ianmoyse.cloud will take you to my main 2 social accounts. So please do engage and follow my content there. Thank you.
What I really got out of that is when people even really solidly into their career, recognizing that having a coach, having mentors, people that they can talk through the challenges that they're facing in their sales and want to get better, want to become more proficient at all these individual skills of sales, instead of the I know how to sell mentality. I've done this for 30 years. On LinkedIn, I get it every post I put. I've been selling since dinosaurs roamed the earth. It's like, so what? Doesn't mean you're good at it. It just means you have longevity. Sales is a profession. It's a performance. And each day, like any athlete or any other performance, what you did yesterday, only helps your reputation. It doesn't do the work for you. And that's kind of the downside of sales. The upside is that you have control over your income. You are a salespreneur, whether you admit it or not. And we're going to find that out very quickly. Now, let me fulfill my promise of talking about the 2 previous disasters I've been through 3, but the first one I barely noticed. And sometimes that's the best strategy, is to just hunker down and continue to work, not freeze, not ignore it, but push through it. Let's start with 9/11, because that was by far the most devastating one. And, on that day, I was on a sales call just a few miles from the Pentagon with somebody who flew in that day from Manhattan, who lived in Tribeca down by the World Trade Center. And he ran up to me. I guess he had heard about it through, I think his wife called him and said a plane had hit the World Trade Center. Now, I didn't see it, so I assumed it was just an accident, like everybody did at the time, and wanted him to focus on the sales call because, I was still in that cloud. But anyways, at the time, it was by far very devastating because for me personally, I was at a pre-revenue startup. We had raised $50 million. We had one client who paid, and they were paying us on MBOs, and the writing was on the wall, meaning that it went from really hard to sell because this is right off of the .com crash. So investment money, liquidity, fears were already in the economy. Unlike today, where we were in a very robust economy and we kind of hit the emergency brake for whatever reason, obviously. But then it was more heading towards a recession. And when that happened, it scared everybody. There was definitely a tone of, terrorism, because it wasn't right after that. There was the anthrax thing, and then the Beltway shooting. And I had spent a lot of time in the D.C. area at the time. So there was a guy going around randomly shooting people. And there wasn't much evidence, so no one knew what the motive was behind it. The anthrax stuff, people were scared to open their mail. But what was different then was that this was an attack. We didn't know if there was going to be more of them. I mean, there were jets circling D.C. at the time 24/7. It was a time of war, and you felt like you were living in a war zone. Now, contrast that to today. Yes, this is a pandemic, but it's affecting a very small group of people. Seriously, everybody else, can get sick and have a bad week or two. What I see differently here is we're going to get over it pretty fast. That's my prediction. Yours may be different. And I want you to apply one of my laws, which is if you know what's going to happen, you know what to do. This adds certainty to our actions. So don't think about what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. Think about what's going to happen in the next 2 months, the rest of the year, and ask yourself, what am I going to wish I did today, a year from now, 6 months from now? And it's not going to be hunker down and watch Netflix. It's going to be take some kind of action. It might be learn how to use Zoom or CoVideo or Pipedrive, or it might be take a course or learn how to open a cold call, how to prospect, how to build a target list, how to build up my network on LinkedIn while I have all this downtime. The crazy thing I've noticed is that LinkedIn activity has gone down, not up. This is kind of counterintuitive. Everybody's supposed to be at home, online, working. It's probably hard to get someone on the phone. Maybe email hasn't changed much, but LinkedIn should be like on fire right now, which tells me people are freezing. And freezing, immediately is understandable, but more than a day or two, you got to get going. And what happened in 9/11 for me was that I knew the writing was on the wall, that the company was going to let go of the salespeople because there was no revenue, and they probably hunkered down for a year or two to perfect the product and then relaunch it, which they ended up doing. But, I wasn't going to sit through that because I knew the job market was going to be terrible because the recovery from that was a long tail. It wasn't going to be quick. So I immediately put my antenna up, talked to some headhunters, and there were jobs. People think that, there's no jobs. There were jobs. And, I called it my 9/11 job because I took it not because I thought it was a great move, but because I needed a job. It was a good base salary, a stable company, great benefits, and it was a startup within a big company. And it was the worst manager I ever had, and it was, a down part of my career, but, you had to do it. The current company, they ended up laying everybody off in February, all the salespeople. So, I would have gotten, 3 or 4 months, but then I would have been unemployed during the bottom, meaning, and I'm not the type of person to just sit around and interview every day. Plus, you're competing against, not tens, but hundreds of people that were out of work at the time. And salespeople, because nobody was buying. Nobody knew what to do. It was definitely a freeze state, a panic state. You see a little bit of that today, but most people who, are adults can see that this is a short-term thing. At least from my perspective. So I ended up getting a job. It took probably a year for that job to become good. Became the top rep. Did really well with it and sprung board into another startup that did even better. And it was fine. It was a good year, I would say, of pain. because the market was tight. And the market's tight right now, but I think that it's going to loosen up very quickly. Now you contrast it to 2008, which was even scarier for a different reason. I had invested in a small business and put a personal guarantee on about $330,000 a year of retail space, meaning I was committed personally to paying that. Which in hindsight seems crazy, but I was doing really well. I had the startup. We were doing fantastic. This business looked like it was good. It was growing very well. But that was a huge commitment. The sales was going well. The real estate market was booming for the wrong reason. And I should have known. I remember being at a bar and the bartender talking about their second house they bought. And that should have been the red flag that before this mortgage thing, I didn't know any bartenders who bought houses, but never mind two. And, all kinds of offers of, home equity lines of credit. So the writing was kind of on the wall, but everybody was enjoying themselves. And then when that hit, I was actually at the end of my lockout period from a company that acquired us, and I was on the, they were like, "That's it, that's the end." And I talked them into letting me stay for the rest of the year so I could finish it up, and I ended up getting a job with zero downtime. Again, it wasn't a great job, but very few sales jobs look great going in. Usually you turn them into something because they're not hiring you to manage orders. They're hiring you to create orders. But that was a scary time because you saw the market doing what it's doing today. But, a lot of people were talking it's going to take 5 years to get us out of this. And it took a couple of years, and it did. But it all seems to work out because guess what? Everyone's got to survive. So everyone's got to work. And for everyone to work, they got to buy stuff to help them get stuff done. So this doesn't seem long-term like that, meaning that guess what? We have immune systems. We tend to get sick and we tend to get better. And I think if there's anybody who's high risk that's connected to you in any way or near you, having them, highly quarantined is, I think, the right thing to do. The rest of us, take our precautions. But do not waste time because the time keeps going. The clock doesn't pause. The clock doesn't get shut down. And we have to, as salespeople, keep progressing. It might not be at the same pace. And we all like predictability. We all want to know what tomorrow looks like. But if we know what it looks like, then something else is on the horizon. And these waves happen, and we get through them. And what has always worked is, focusing and taking action and understanding what other people are going through, but keep moving forward one step at a time. I mean, like the people in the chorus, I congratulate them because they're utilizing this time. Because what two skills do you need in B2B sales? You need to be able to start conversations and get meetings. Real important skill. Nobody has ever perfected it, but there is a system to do it and have a community to talk it through. See how other people are doing it. Have tons of examples and methods and tools and systems to see what works better than other things. Nothing works 100% of the time with people because that's what we're doing. We're dealing with people. And the other is closing the complex sale. How do you get these deals done when the default is for it not to happen? That is not just a strategy and a skill, but it is something that is unbelievable. So I listen to other people who have done big deals, and there's clearly some understanding of it, but not enough. It's something that I've been studying for now 30 years because I hate losing. I love winning. And I hate wasting my time. And I like thinking ahead. And that's really what B2B sales is. It's not so much the numbers game that you see in the B2C world. Yours might be. It might be a small transactional sale. But in the bigger sales, it's much more about strategy, much more about focus and judgment and prioritization, as opposed to some mathematical equation. We all want it to be math. I get it, because that feels secure. Math you see, but it's much more like a heuristic. A heuristic is like predicting the weather. You don't get it down to the second. You get a bland generality based off of patterns that you see over the years. And of course, things change. And that's really what the complex sale is like. Come up with your heuristic about how to do it. It's never going to be an equation. But that heuristic can become better and better as you experience each deal, because you got all these different players. You can put names on them, that's fine, but they don't adhere to your name. They adhere to what they want. To give everybody an update on the courses, people have really signed up. I thought people would freeze, but most people are fighting. They're like, I want to learn this stuff because now's the time to build your network. Now's your time to build your system. Now's your time to double down on the few deals that will close, the network that you currently have, how to leverage it, how to grow it and expand it. So if you're interested, go to b2brevenue.com. and check them out. Sign up for a time to talk about it if you'd like. There's only a few spots left, but I'll open up more if I can. I'm working extra hard now because I'm trying to make sure I can support the listeners who are affected from an employment standpoint, help them get jobs very quickly. So I'll be firing up the Career Strategy podcast again. I think there's like 12 episodes up there. I got a bunch that I've already pre-recorded. I'll get more up there as I can. It's all free, all out there to help you either secure your current role and expand it or find the next one for you. And I'll be trying to do some stuff on LinkedIn to match people who looking and people who are looking for great reps, so that we can get everybody back to normal as fast as possible. Hey, I appreciate everybody listening. If you could do me a favor, just tell one other person about the podcast. If you're interested in more content, there's 2 other shows. There's the Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, a daily podcast with Q&A, and the B2B Revenue Leadership Show. So check them out. Also, it's all on YouTube as well. So just go search Brian Burns Sales on YouTube, and you can watch it if you prefer, watch a video. Because now, like if you have an Apple TV, or you can put YouTube on your little TV, and you can watch me 24/7. Binge Burns. That's what we say. BB. Binge the Burns. We'll see you next time.